let's move on to the situation in Ukraine, where Ukrainian forces have recently managed to penetrate Russia's first line of defence on the southern front, according to reports on the ground. 2 former Australian soldiers are now on their way to Ukraine as Russia's invasion of the country now enters its 560th day. They're wanting to join the fight, despite being medically discharged from the Australian Army and despite what they fear could be government repercussions for doing so. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin is expected to meet with North Korea's Kim Jong-un to broker an arms deal. Liam Mendes, who was a young reporter and excellent researcher on my book on Wuhan, well, he's been in Ukraine for the Australian newspaper for several weeks now, and he spoke to those soldiers. He joins me now from Ukraine. Liam Mendes, thank you so much for being there, for reporting on this important issue, and for joining us this evening. What's it like on the ground?
Thanks for having me, Shari. At the moment, we're here in Izum. It's about 50 kilometres from the front line. On the ground, it's quite extraordinary. You could be driving around some of these major cities and then also smaller towns. And as you can see on the screen there, buildings are being completely destroyed, taken to the ground. I'm here in a school where behind me a rocket has come through. And you can see, I mean, this is just a primary school, a local primary school, and a rocket has come through. It's hard to believe that this is sort of the things that are happening, but that's the reality of this war.
So that footage that we are looking at now and that we just saw before, you filmed this yourself for a documentary you're working on. What has it been like speaking with the locals? What have they had to tell you about what life is like now?
Well, it's been quite extraordinary meeting a lot of the locals here. As you can see, this is an apartment building that was destroyed. We went up to the top of it yesterday. But the main thing that we're learning is that the locals are extremely resilient. There's people still living in these apartments that you're seeing that have been blown in half. You know, an entire section of the apartment has been ripped out. And there's this gentleman that we met yesterday, and he goes every day he walks to get his water because there's no running water. He's got limited electricity, so they are pushing on. They are fighting on in their own ways. He's 73 years old, this gentleman, but that's a reality right across the country.
That's incredible. I can't imagine a 73-year-old deciding to fight. Liam, you've got a story in the paper today about Australians who are still choosing to head to the front line to help Ukrainians. How many Australians are currently fighting in Ukraine?
Well, yeah, that's right. We met 2 former Australian Army soldiers. They're on their way to the front line right now. They've been training local former civilians who have now, decided that they're going to fight for their country. They're training them here. It's a real basic training, 2 weeks. In the country here, there's about 100 Australians that are fighting on the ground, on the front line, and they're ranging from infantry soldiers to running drone operations as well.
Liam Mendes, please stay safe over there. We need you back here. You're a very talented journalist. Thank you so much for joining us.